So another aside, um, there are certain details of the payment I'm not supposed to discuss, such as the amount. That's confidential. Um, but yeah, we had made an agreement, and it was going to be for season two content as well as for MMO content, and it was the work we were going to be doing was going to be stretching far into the unforeseeable future. We knew that. Um, but what we could not foresee was the amount of work it would take and how it would pile up day after day, and the number of people that would be required, and the number of people we would lose along the way, requiring us to bring more in. Um, and that brings us to sort of the next arc of season two, which was getting into inertia and um, retrieving Ionite and all that good stuff. And for inertia, we certainly needed more people. We needed redstone skill. We needed people good with mods. None of us on Blockworks were good with the mods, so it should have been a no-brainer from day one to just go on the subreddit and start recruiting. But I hadn't really done anything like this before, and I don't know if many of the Blockworks people had either. But in any case, for whatever reason, we didn't think to start recruiting until um, several weeks before Inertia. Um, the build progress on Inertia itself was slowed significantly. But yeah, Inertia took longer than intended because we were using all these mod blocks, right? And they were causing glitches, and they could not be world edit copied and pasted to other areas, so we had to do every duplicated segment by hand. When I say we, I mean them. I wasn't working on the actual building. It was Block and James and Blood, just slaving away on that monstrosity for much longer than we expected. And I got a little bit upset at them, and I tried to make it clear to them that I wasn't totally upset at them, but at the same time I was just upset at everything, because things were going off schedule, and I was already starting to see how season two was going to be more of an undertaking than I had hoped for. And just sort of as another aside, I think this thing is just aside after aside. There's no actual front to it. um, I had started working with Lady Christine, yeah, because we had brought in the other Reddit people. So Christine was, part of that group. It was Lady Christine, Mr. Mad Spy, Zine. These were like the heavy hitters. Ral. All vital to season two's success. We started to bring them in, and I was working with Chris to transition Martha the Mystic over to her. She was going to play Martha instead of me, because I had to pick up Ionite as a character, and I couldn't be playing 3 NPCs at once. Yeah, so we did Inertia, and it worked swimmingly, thanks to the expertise of our technical people. By this point, the environment had gotten a little more complex, right? I was more aware of the subreddit than before, um, because of the fact that I had been doing all this recruiting on it, and lots of discussions were already going on. People had caught on to the fact that season 2 was very different from season 1, and some season 1 fans were very adamantly advocating for things going back to the way they were, which is understandable, because when you just it's just that feeling like growing up with something. It's like growing up eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, or heck, eating lettuce, eating anything. Your body just becomes conditioned to it and you love it. So, early days people, I totally understand the affection for season one. And I realize it's not just because you're used to it. It's also because there were elements of it that were just really refreshing. It's, the fact that it was new and, people like me hadn't come in to overcomplicate it yet. And the formula was solid, and you knew what to expect, and the streamers were just doing their shenanigans, and it was a wonderful time, I'm sure. I never watched an episode of season one before season two started. And in research for season two, I watched all of maybe 1.5 episodes of season one. Um, I was never a Mianite fan. I was never a fan of any of the streamers who did Mianite. I was just a sculptor with Blockworks, and a storyteller on my own time, role player on my own time. Never much into YouTube, never much into comedy in general. And I bother to say that because I realize that the focus of a lot of the streaming content of the Mianite streamers is comedy. And that's an important thing to be aware of in, approaching something like Mianite to do story work. And I will admit that was a consideration I made the consideration, but I chose to ignore it because I needed to do it my way. I needed to try this. I needed to try my brand of storytelling in a strange new medium. And I was very fortunate to, find people who were interested in doing that experiment with me and throwing in their own brand of storytelling as well. Lady Christine had her own brand, Mad Spy had his own brand, Zine had his own brand, Ral had his own brand. By the way, I've been watching this video back, and there was something I forgot to say. I'm not totally anti-comedy. I like some comedy. I played Mianite, for fuck's sake. I played Bro Robes. I like that stuff. I mean, Mianite was funny at times. I like comedy. I like shenanigans. I like pranks, although I'm not very good at them. That's probably why I didn't do them. I'm just not clever enough. But anyway, I do like comedy, but it's about the proportion of the drama to the comedy. I take about 95% drama and 5% comedy. That's just the way I am. Just to clarify. So yeah, I was starting to realize that the environment was more complex, and frustrations were coming up. If you know me, you know that I struggle a little bit with anger and sensitivity, and I was not dealing with the whole season one preference as gracefully as I could have. There were a lot of fans of season two, but when someone came up and talked about season one, I would type back, and it wasn't always in the kindest way. And on top of that, I feel comfortable saying this because I think that Chris and I are on better terms now. But I was at fault for just being a little too controlling and not understanding of elements of teamwork that kind of went a little bit deeper than just getting the job done. I was very, all right, let's do the thing, and often it was, let's do the thing my way. And sometimes it wasn't quite that simple. Sometimes you have to be a friend to someone. That was one of the things Chris taught me, and it took me a very long time to learn it, and I don't think I learned it in time, and I still don't think I've completely learned it. In fact, I may have gotten even worse by now. I don't know. But yeah, it was starting to get a little hot. That's the point I'm trying to make. Combined, emotional pressures of the team, just working with the people, and schedule delays. So we move into the new arc. It took me quite a bit of work to procure the Ionite account from Deck. Um, um, I had expected Deck to be around a little more than he was. I think that's a fair thing to say. Um, Most of the time Deck was around, he was fixing the server, giving us accounts for our NPCs, or just kind of doing a general checkup. But for the vast majority of season 2 days, he was completely absent. I'm not sure how much he watched. Sometimes he came on the server to mess around with the streamers and show his face and, be Deck. Um, but yeah, I was just a little surprised that he wasn't like there for his own thing. But yeah, he was one of the faces of Mianite. But understandably, he was very busy with school. I think, at least at some points, he was busy with school, and he had vacations to go on, and probably other things in his life to deal with that I'm not aware of. So this definitely isn't a judgment on Deck. But yeah, it was interesting. Just kind of talking with Deck and explaining my reasoning to him about about why I should play Ionite. Understandably, he was sort of possessive because he was the daddy of the gods, right? And like that was understandable. And he was a little reluctant, but graciously allowed me to take the helm. And he realized that he hadn't been around as much for story, and that I had basically taken it like off the rails, and Maya Knight was like a totally new thing now. Season 2 was totally different from season 1. I recall him expressing that sentiment once or twice, just kind of like, it's no longer mine, that kind of thing. And golly, like now that season 2 is over and season 3 is starting to gear up for some people. I know nothing about it, but I know that it's been announced and people are starting to think about it behind the scenes, people who are not me. Yeah, now that I'm in this position, I feel like it's not going to be mine anymore, and that's a little sad. So like I can understand where Deck was coming from. Yeah, so I got a hold of Ionite, and yeah, we did the Ionite episode, and that was just a great time. I felt like, I think that was the point when I realized, oh gosh, I skipped a whole bunch of stuff getting to Ionite. Sparkles, Taint situation. I'm going to go back to that in a second because I need to reiterate that as many times as I can in my lifetime because it's so fun to talk about. But yeah, when we like got to that like Taint, Abomination, and Ionite stuff, that was when I realized Mianite season 2 was actually going to be like a serious thing, and it was going to be a good story. Whether or not the streamers wanted to be involved, it was going to be a thing, and Chris and Ral and Zine and Matt and we were going to go for it and like really make something good. And that was exciting to realize that we had that sort of potential.